In the distribution of immense gains, certain stockholders have been excluded, among them Brigham Young. It is clear there is an attempt to defraud Brigham Young.
In Boston, John Sharp was making little progress in getting money out of the Union Pacific.
We presented a bill for $198,000, which was met with a grand laugh.
Several UP leaders grumbled that Brigham Young was actually trying to gouge the company, gouge them for money he did not deserve. But a deal was cut to allow Mormon immigrants to ride the rails west, with the fare being credited against the debt. Brigham Young was also interested in using the Union Pacific as a primary supplier for his plan to build a railroad from Salt Lake City to the Transcontinental Line. Somewhere, it was proposed that the Union Pacific transfer $700,000 worth of rail cars and supplies to Brigham Young to close out the debt.
We know we owe you $1.2 million, but go back to Young and ask him if he'll take $700,000 and we'll just call it quits. And Sharp goes and he does that, and he comes back all the way back to Boston and says, Young says that this will work.
The deal would be good for the Utah Territory, but Brigham Young knew railroad supplies would not pay the men and would not settle the IOUs with local merchants.
January 28, 1870. Dear brother, I wish to have a meeting of all those of the brethren to whom I am indebted for work on the Union Pacific Railroad, to talk the matter over relative to the indebtedness.
Young called the meeting for the Salt Lake Tabernacle. Closed to the public, the content of the meeting never made the newspapers. Years later, a rail worker said Brigham confirmed the merely obvious. The railroad money was not coming to Utah. It was a loss they would all have to endure, another test of faith. He invoked images of earlier Mormon suffering and said, this too would be overcome. The scandal of an unpaid Utah debt was lost in a sea of Union Pacific red ink and congressional investigations into political corruption surrounding the railroad. Of more lasting consequence, within months of its completion, the Transcontinental Railroad was changing the face of the American West. Nowhere was the change more profound than in Utah. The population of the territory more than doubled between 1860 and 1870. Mormon immigrants could now travel across the plains to their new American Zion in a matter of days. But in the first year of the rail line, an equal number of non-Mormons flowed to the Utah Territory. They encouraged a mining boom in the area, started new businesses, and populated new rail towns like Corinne. An attempt to have Corinne and the Transcontinental Railroad seceded from Utah and grafted onto Idaho was approved by a congressional committee, but ultimately died. Missionaries started appearing in the Utah Territory, Methodists, Catholics, Presbyterians, all creating school and medical missions in an effort to convert members of the Mormon Church, with little success. Political parties appeared in the territory. The Liberal Party's platform was simple and direct. It was the non-Mormon Party. Mormons responded with their own People's Party, and the Utah Territory took on a unique brand of two-party politics. In 1870, the politics became even more unique for the time when the territorial legislature granted women the right to vote. Some hailed it an act of enlightened suffrage. Others labeled it a cynical maneuver by Brigham Young to assure his political control as the Utah population became more diverse. Both Mormon and non-Mormon would debate if all this represented progress. In one version, Brigham Young would be portrayed as politically blind and intransigent, steamrolled by shrewder men, leading his people down a path of economic ruin. In the other version, Young had done all he could, protected local control of the economy, and secured the future of Utah by working to bring the railroad to life. In 1868, Brigham Young had forecast that the railroad would mean prosperity and a golden era of appreciation for his vision of the kingdom of God.
And when this road is finished, our friends can come and see us and witness the peace, the order, the freedom from crime that possesses the cities of our Zion.
Instead of Young's desired confirmation, the most anticipated event in Utah's short history would bring change. The isolation that was both shield and challenge would evaporate in stronger, complicated ties to a nation marching westward. Expectations were replaced by realities. In 1869, the ceremony at Promontory had appeared to be an end. Promontory would prove to be a beginning.
Production of Promontory was made possible in part through a grant from the George S. and Dolores Doré Eccles Foundation and a grant from the R. Harold Burton Foundation, and through the support of the contributing members of KUED.